if you're gambling on the Orange Bowl, man, you got some dart throws on this game, guys. Where in Georgia, number 6 Georgia is a 14-point favorite against number 5 Florida State. This game, my God, there is not a weirder bowl game to bet, especially as we are sitting here recording this again, December 19th. And if you are unaware, let me just set the stage for you guys, because there's probably a million ways that we could go with this one. If you're unaware of some of the personnel things and maybe just looked at this matchup knowing, all right, FSU missed the playoff, it's like this Power 5 unbeaten, you'd be saying to yourself, oh, what an awesome matchup. And maybe it still will be, but man, there are just so many questions and moving pieces. Trey Benson, Johnny Wilson, Jaheim Bell, all opted out of this game. Not sure on Keon Coleman, Jared Verse, those guys. Jamon Dumas-Johnson, he hit the portal for Georgia. We know that Jordan Travis is out. The selection committee knows that Jordan Travis is out. We know that Tate Rodemaker is playing in this one. As of this recording, we don't know about Brock Bowers. We don't know about Ladd McConkey, both of whom very much less than 100% in the SEC championship, have NFL decisions to make. Yes, Ladd McConkey has an NFL decision to make, not obviously in the same breath as Brock Bowers, who may or may not be human. The good news, though, and I want to tee this up for you guys, and this is maybe the most important bit of news that we could have gotten before doing this recording. We found out on Monday, December 18th, that Carson Beck is playing in this football game. That's about all we got at this point. How in the world do you look at a 4-point spread? Marler, let's start with you. That line actually hasn't had a ton of movement, and maybe it will as we get more and more opt-outs leading up to this.
Listen, as the noted Alabama homer of this podcast, this company, but also I feel like it's pretty rational. Let me just apologize to both these teams for ruining your season, for one. That, like, Florida State being out of the national championship playoff is like, even as a Bama fan, it doesn't sit right. It's just gross. It's gross. I think that Georgia being you said a 4-point favorite?
14-point favorite.
I was like, dude, I'm jumping all over that. I do think this is interesting because you could look at this from a number of ways. Like both teams have a ton of opt-outs. Georgia's opt-outs, you don't see a bunch of starters, I feel like. And you don't see this mass exodus as you see at Florida State for I think, very different reasons. A really tough situation to, like, you could sit here and do all the Kirby coach speak, and Mike Norvell, I'm sure, is like exhausted himself trying to find motivational quotes and stuff about how to get this team ready. There's just few things that are more deflating than what happened to both of these teams. I will also say, if you're looking at Georgia, that the track record here, like I keep going back to the Sugar Bowl, right? In 2000, what was it, 2019, Connor?
End of the 2018 season where they lost to Texas. The Texas is back game, Sam Ehlinger. Yep.
Right. So that game where they, you go to NOLA and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we didn't want to be there. We had opt-outs. Maybe I think people are probably clinging a little bit too much to that. Like they think that might happen again. This is a different program. This is a team that has won back-to-back national championships. They've lost 2 games in 3 years. And it's also a very proud team. And I think a proud coaching staff that is, regardless of all the outside noise they think it's coming about, like these former 5-stars that are leaving the portal. By the way, you look at the playing time of those former 5-stars, not a huge hit on the current roster. I really like Georgia in this game. It's also one of these things I feel like I'm going to have to watch it and just it is going to be the most like guilt-filled watch I may ever have.
Also worth noting, since that game, Georgia is 6-0 in bowl games since losing that one, and 2 of which were non-playoff games in which they did get up 4 against Baylor, and then they had the nice comeback in the Peach Bowl against Cincinnati. Bob, 2 touchdowns is massive for a New Year's Six bowl. And I don't think the selection committee set the line for that one. But I mean, if they did, I guess they would have had Georgia at number 5 instead of having Florida State at number 5. But how would you approach this knowing that we could get a lot more information leading up to this that could tip your hand?
Yeah, I mean, as we talk right now, I pull this line out sometimes, and it often will make me look like an idiot, but I do go to it time and time again. And I think there are certain situations where the line or the spread tells me all I need to know. And I think that this is a very revealing point spread. And man, if there's ever really a time to dig into the context of a game and really understand what's happening in terms of the opt-outs and the motivation angles, because I think a lot of people are going to look at this game, casual bettors, casual observers of college football, and they're going to say, Florida State, man, they got screwed. And now they're a 14-point underdog to Georgia. Man, the disrespect. I bet you they're going to rise up and show everyone what they're really made of. And like, that's just not what this is, unfortunately. I mean, as much as I would love to watch a game with that angle and that storyline and have the networks be able to sell that to the audience, it's just really not what's going on here. I think that this was we gutted it out against Louisville. We did our job. They screwed us. And I think the party's kind of over there. I think everyone kind of just dispersed at that point. And I think you're going to get a very watered down Florida State product, a team that is probably not up for this game, probably not focused for it. That's what I think is going to happen. I frankly think it's going to be the total 180 of the we're going to show you. I just don't think they're going to have any juice for this game, just from a human element, and that doesn't even get into the actual matchups, which certainly favor Georgia by a ton. So, I mean, I'm absolutely leaning Georgia in this game. I think that there are plenty of reasons to do it. Like, I can just give you a couple trends that I think are noteworthy here. You go back over the last 3 seasons. I know that this Georgia team is not the team that it was over the previous 2 years, but when favored between 10.5 to 21 points, they're 11-2 against the spread. So they're comfortable with bigger numbers. They cover bigger numbers in this range. Go back to their overall performance in bowl games dating back to 1992. They're 22-10 against the spread. This is a program that tends to perform well in bowl season against the number. And if you just want to do the whole conference thing, since 1992, you go back over the last 30 years, Georgia's 31-13 against the spread when playing ACC schools. So there's a lot here just from a historical big picture context that kind of says Georgia. And I just can't get over that Florida State game in that conference championship. I mean, 3-0 at the half, 2.6 yards per attempt through the air. They ran for under 4 yards per carry. This team is not going to be able to run with Georgia.
Different set of circumstances, I would argue, just because of you got a different starting quarterback that's going to be out there. The Louisville defense was pretty good as well. And it was pouring rain in those conditions. I will say that. But yes, I agree, especially knowing the opt-outs that we already have available for Florida State. You question what the weapons are going to look like. I will say, if you are going to bet on Florida State, if you're like, listen, I just heard everything you guys said about Georgia and Florida State in this matchup, I'm like, I'm not buying it. I'm all in on the Noles. I've got like 6 people that live in my cul-de-sac that I bet will be betting on the Noles as well. If you're just sitting there like, I'm gonna bet on the fact that Mike Norvell has won 19 games in a row because he knows what he's doing. He will just figure it out. There is a part of me that wonders, get in on this now, because if Georgia has these opt-outs, and if Carson Beck gets into a spot where maybe it's reminiscent of Jared Stidham in the Peach Bowl against UCF at the end of the 2017 season, Jake Fromm in that aforementioned Sugar Bowl against Texas at the end of the 2018 season, Kyle Trask in the bowl game against Oklahoma where he threw 3 picks in the first quarter, where it's a quarterback who returns that you feel good about, but all of a sudden you're looking around going, maybe he doesn't have what he's used to having, and it shows. There is that possibility, and I think maybe that's more interesting from a live betting standpoint than to look at it from the onset, because of all those things you just mentioned. The deck is still stacked in Georgia's favor, especially if Florida State is not approaching this like, oh, we're going to declare ourselves national champs if we win this game, which is just a thing that you do in the state of Florida. Marler, your guy. You've been close to Florida State all year with Tyler. Mm-hmm. What's his confidence level as a bettor and as a fan? Because I feel like that can almost tell the story for those that are feeling like this is a really good spot to get on a lot of different things for the Noles.
I wish I said this earlier. We should have just had him on so he could speak for himself, because I love Tyler to death, and I don't think that I'm out of line for saying what I'm about to say. But I mean, he's been emotionally broken since that announcement from the committee. And, I guess somebody's been emotionally broken since 2017. I get it. Like, I fully get it, guys. I mean, like, what do you want him to do? I think from a confidence standpoint, this game on paper 5 weeks ago has so much to like about it. But now where it's at, it's like this, I don't think it sucks. I think that Florida State's still in a good spot with like a couple of things that they could possibly do. Again, I'll go back to my go-tos, right? Like Florida State to score first. it seems like it's not, after what we witnessed in the ACC championship game, maybe not the best bet, but at plus 160, there's value there, especially to a Georgia team that has given up a lot of, they have let their opponent score first in a lot of games this year. So I don't think it's that bad. But to cover 14, I just think with where these two programs not even are trending, but where they are right now, I think the pride standpoint is so much more on Georgia for this one, to kind of sit here and say, listen, that team won 29 straight games. 29 straight games. They lost on a neutral field by 3 points to Alabama, and it's their second loss in 3 years, and they dropped from 1 to 6. There's not a better motivator in this country, I think, than Kirby Smart, and I think he'll be able to do that as well. I will say, from the betting standpoint and the positives from Florida State, one area that I would look into from a player prop standpoint, Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman, their totals for the ACC
Johnny
championship.
Wilson opting out of this game. Just a heads up.
Right.
But Keon Coleman TBD on whether or not he's going to be playing. Somebody that's widely considered a first round prospect for this game. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. You're fine. What I was trying to say was those two played their prop bets for just the ACC championship game. 47.5 total yards for Keon, 52.5 for Johnny Wilson, or maybe it's vice versa. Obviously, like you said, Wilson is opting out of this one. If Keon Coleman plays, he is going to be the go-to guy. Jaheim Bell is not going to be playing as well. Tate Rodemaker, I think, is a quarterback that, he's not in the best situation, but that's a Georgia secondary that has struggled at times this year. And I think that if Florida State is looking to go somewhere to try to attack this Georgia defense, that's where you do it, is in the secondary.
I would think so as well. That could also turn into a spot where Georgia, with the over-the-top help, if they're trying to pick on Malachi Starks, that might not be the best formula either. Yeah. Who knows what this Florida State offensive game plan is going to look like. We might not truly know what their objective is against this Georgia defense. It's still very talented Georgia defense until they actually get out there and have to make things happen with what could be a new-look type team. Any other thoughts on this one at all that you're looking at, Bob, that just kind of stand out, that we can try and neutralize some of these moving pieces heading into this game?
Yeah, I just have two notes here, and I didn't really know how to wedge it into the conversation naturally, so now I'm going to force it into the conversation. But Keon Coleman, we don't know if he's going to play.
Right.
Certainly the volume element, as Chris just said, he's going to become the focus. If he plays, he will get the football. But it should be worth noting that he stayed under his yardage prop in each of his last 4 games to finish the season. So I think, and this will lead me into my final point, I think what happens is you get these names and you start to say, well, this is a dude. I'm going to rely on him. I'm going to hammer his prop. And, the line starts to inflate, right? And you start to lose value. And so you look at Georgia. Georgia against the spread this season was 4-8-1. And that is not necessarily a surprise. I mean, they had a great year. They were right there, but this is what we see with champions. We see odds makers start to balloon against them. They start to inflate against them. You look, just even go over to pro football for a second. Look what's happened to the Kansas City Chiefs this year. They've struggled to beat the spread. You take a team like the Eagles. They were 10-1. They're struggling to beat the spread week in, week out. So what happens is you get these teams, they win, they have a ton of success, and odds makers take advantage of that, and they tack a point or two extra onto these lines, and they figure people are still going to bet it, so let's get that value in our favor. So that's one thing to kind of be cognizant of. And Florida State was good against the spread this year, 8-5. So if you're looking for something to latch on to as a Florida State backer here, I guess be aware of that.
I'll also say too, and I don't want to get your thoughts on this, the only props I really like on this one, I love this. I love the stat about Georgia being 4-8-1 against the spread, because as dominant as they've been, that is a team that I think Vegas made themselves a lot of money on this year, just with public betting on going on Georgia. I do like Florida State under 14.5 total points for the game. I think that's a pretty good spot because, for all the things we've already mentioned. The only other thing I can think of, if Brock Bowers plays, Connor, I should have done more research on this, but he has not opted out.
He has not officially opted out. The last I had heard was that he is rehabbing ahead of this game, and that he is still trying to figure out what his next step is going to be, again, as of December 19th.
If for some unknown reason this kid plays, and I understand that's a big if, even with how dominant he's been for most of the year, his total receiving yards prop bet has been in the 50s. Hasn't really trickled up over 60 at any point this year. I think the highest I've even seen is like 58.5. If he plays, I think that's a house, like bet the mortgage type bet on him to go over, because one, he's been tremendous in the postseason his first 2 years. I understand it's very different considering that this is not a college football playoff game, but they are going to go to him. Even if it's just, you're telling me he's going to be it's a send-off game. How many times have we watched Georgia this year first play the game in the SEC championship against Alabama? They get him out in space, roll out your quarterback and get him to like where he's open for a 20-yard gain. I think that if this is something that he does play, and you find yourself with a prop bet in the 50s of his receiving yards, I think you would hammer the over there.
I wonder if Vegas would bake in a little bit of risk as well if they decide, if Georgia and if Bowers ultimately decides that he is going to play in this one, if they bake in the risk of the ankle is tweaked in the first quarter and then they just shut it down. And if there's value in that, if you're saying, look, I just think that guy, he's going to have a send-off that is going to be fitting, and I think he's going to have a big day as long as he's out there, and he's going to play through pain. He's not going to really hurt. It's about pain tolerance. So there could be something there where Vegas says, we have to bake that into our odds that Georgia can just shut this guy down, and it could be more of a, more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like just a figure, figuratively speaking, send off, and not an actual Brock Bowers 12 reception, 100-yard type game. Then who knows? Maybe there's something there to be said for that. But yeah, let's just hope that this game is actually entertaining and not the blowout that the selection committee thought it would definitely be had they put Florida State against one of these elite teams. Hey, sports fans, we've got an exciting offer exclusively for new users of ESPN Bet. When you join, be sure to enter the promo code SOUTH during sign up to unlock an additional $50 in your betting account. That's right. You can wager on your favorite sports and receive up to $250 in bonus bets when you use the promo code SOUTH. Please remember, you must be 21 years old to participate in sports betting. We encourage responsible gambling within your means. If you ever need assistance or support, please reach out to 1-800-522-4700. Join the action today and make the most of this fantastic offer.